Welcome to the Demo Theater Turbocharge feature display on iOS with Popups. I'm Suganya Baskaran and I'm a product engineer with the runtime group in Esri. Before we begin, have any of you worked with the version 100 release of Runtime SDKs? Okay, how about Popups? Oh, okay, good to know. All right. Let's get started, and this is our agenda. After a brief introduction of what pop-ups are in the context of ArcGIS platform, we'll take a closer look at pop-ups in web maps and how they are configured. Next, we'll see how you can display those pop-ups in an iOS app. Then we'll also see how you can create and display pop-ups in code, and talk about the various capabilities and support the default pop-ups in the SDK provides to you. And for those of you who wish to take it further, we'll briefly talk about customizing pop-ups. So first up, what is a pop-up? A pop-up is a UI component that is used to view and edit information about geographical elements like features. So the information can be attributes, attachments, charts, hyperlinks, graph, etc. Pop-up also enforces rules and validations that apply to ArcGIS system. Pop-ups can be created and configured in ArcGIS Pro, online or portal, and in runtime through code. Let's begin the next section with a quick tour of how you configure pop-ups in web maps. I have two web maps here. First, let's see how you can configure a basic pop-up, and then we'll see how you can configure pop-ups with custom attributes and styles. So this is a map showing cities from the state of Utah. Pop-ups are enabled by default, so let me tap on it and bring them. The default pop-ups appearance is a plain list of attributes and its values, and that's what we see here. And all of these may not be relevant to our users, so let's trim this down. I can do that by going to the More options here and choosing to configure the pop-up. You can configure pop-ups with a combination of static text and attribute values. Let me change this and make the title to just have the city name. It's as simple. Next, when it comes to configuring the pop-up's contents, there are a few options. But in this case, let's stick with a simple one, a list of field attributes, and let's configure it. For this pop-up, I only want to display a few fields: city name, state name, elevation, and its population. Let's say OK and save the map. So that's one basic setup. Let me switch to the other map that I have. This map shows the demographics in the counties of Utah, so a little more information than the previous map. Let's bring up the pop-up. It has population, population density, and a whole lot of other information. Let's say we have real estate user base, and they are only interested to see fields that are relevant to them. Let's configure that. Again, I go to configuring pop-up. Let me choose the name of the county as the title. And in this case, to configure the pop-up contents, I don't want to just show a subset of the fields. I want to present them differently. So let me choose a custom attribute display and say configure. So this presents me with an editor where I can enter a combination of static text and field values. I have some information already typed up that I think will be relevant to my users. So let me copy and paste that here. So some basic information about the county, and a custom list of attributes and their values. I want this text to stand out, so let me make it bold. And I also want to highlight some fields that I think our users would be interested in, so let me change the color for them. And for those users who wish to know more about the county, I want to include the Wikipedia link. So now I know the format Wikipedia uses for their county URLs. So that's what I've done here, and I've included the county field, the attribute in the URL. So let me embed this and maybe make it bold. Say OK. Now, in addition to the attributes, I also want to provide some charts to my users. Let me add a pie chart. I'll give it a name. And let's say I want to add renter-occupied homes, owner-occupied homes, and vacant homes. That's it. I'll say OK. Save the map. Now, if I bring up the pop-up, this is definitely legible than the default pop-up. The text is formatted. I have the Wikipedia link here, and I also see the occupancy. So with those two pop-ups, let's next see how you can view these web map pop-ups in code. Before we go to the code, I don't think I showed how this simple pop-ups looks like. It's basically a subset of the attributes that we configured. Okay. So the first step to display these web map pop-ups in iOS would be to load an existing map that has pop-ups configured and bind the map to map view. Why? A map is really a container that has base maps and operational layers and can be thought of as a model tier in the MVC architecture. Map view, on the other hand, represents the view tier. So when we bind map to the map view, only then the map's contents are drawn. Next, when the user taps on the map, we wish to display pop-ups for those features that are at the tap location. So identify operation helps us to explore features at a given geographical map point. So that's the next step. And the results of the identify operation is going to contain pop-up objects in addition to the features in that location. Once you have the pop-up objects, they need to be added to a special view controller exposed by the SDK called the Popups view controller. Popups view controller can be thought of as a master view controller that in turn manages other views, each with a specific purpose and behavior, like attachment management or media management. And the Popups view controller basically abstracts all of these underlying things from the developer. So once we've added Popups to the view controller, we may choose to change the presentation or transition styles of this view controller, basically how we want to appear on the screen depending on the device's form factor and the animation we wish to provide, etc. Then you may also implement the many delegate methods that the Popup view controller offers. Delegates are basically async callbacks that occur whenever some important event occurs in your application. So you may implement those, and finally you need to present the Popups view controller. And you as a developer are also responsible for dismissing the Popups view controller. Next, we'll take a look at another demo to display these web map pop-ups we first configured in an iOS app. So I'm going to just kick off the app so it's building and I can talk in the meanwhile. So let's take a look at the code here. First, I'm initializing a map with the Utah cities web map, the first web map that we configured. I'm loading the map. Oops. I load the map and I bind the map to the map view. And I set the map's touch delegate. Why do I do this? So I can implement this delegate method which gets called back whenever the user taps on the device. When this gets called back, I'm going to get the tap location and I'm going to call identify layers on the map view. Identify is an async operation and it's going to give me an array of results, one for each operational layer in the map. In our case, we just have one layer. So in a generic sense, I would just iterate through the results, get the pop-ups directly from the identify layer results, put them in an array, and I initialize my pop-ups view controller with these pop-ups and an optional style. And before presenting the view controller, I also set the view controller's delegate to be my current class. I do this again, so I can implement this delegate method that would get called back when the user is done viewing the pop-ups, because I'm responsible for dismissing it, right? So that's what I do in this method. I dismiss the pop-ups view controller. So I think the app should be loaded now. So here's the same web map that we saw earlier. Let me tap on a feature to bring up the pop-up. When I tapped, the map view's touch delegate was called back, and I have the tap location, and we performed identify operation, which gave me the pop-ups from this location, and we added the pop-ups to the view controller, and the view controller is presented. You see, it has the same subset of fields that we authored in the web map. I hit done to dismiss it. Again, this delegate method is getting called and we are dismissing the pop-up. Now, let me change the web map to be the second web map we saw, and the map would load with this web map. Let's build and run this. Give it a few seconds, maybe zoom in, that should help it load faster. Okay, so let me get this out of the way. So this is the second web map, the demographics map we saw. Let me tap to bring up the pop-up here. Pop-ups are fetched from the web map and displayed, not just the content, we have the same formatting that we saw, and there's the link there. Let me tap on the link now, and it loads the link right within my pop-up in a web view controller. I hit done, and there's also the chart. I hit, it opens up in another view controller, and as I click the individual segments, I get some information about it. So this view controller that's displaying the chart and the web view controller that displayed the link, everything is managed by the master pop-ups view controller for you. So basically that's how you configure web map pop-ups and bring them to your iOS app. Switching back to slides now. So far, we looked at pop-ups configured in web maps. Sometimes the web map you're working with may not have pop-ups. It may not be even your web map. Or it could be that your app does not need a web map in the first place. Either way, you don't have pop-ups ready to use. You need to create them yourselves in code. So here's the workflow to do that. You need to add a layer to map in code, bind map to map view, identify layers, get features from the identify results. You would create pop-ups from the features, add pop-ups to the pop-ups view controller, present and dismiss it. You will notice this process looks quite similar to what we saw with that of the web map pop-ups, except in two places. First, you don't get pop-ups from the identify results because there aren't any to start with. You just get the features. Next, you need to create the pop-ups in code from the features. And that's simply done with this line of code. The method takes in a geo element parameter. A geo element can be a feature or a graphic. In our case, it would be the feature from the identify result. A pop-up created in code by default has all the fields, but there are options in which you can configure that in your code as well. Next, let's see what the default pop-up in the iOS SDK offers. We know that pop-ups allow you to view and edit features, but the default pop-ups in iOS also makes inline editing of attributes possible. It provides different input forms like segment controls and lists while editing. It also provides data validation and adherence to range and coded domains of the field, etc. And pop-ups facilitate geometry editing through Sketch Editor. What is a Sketch Editor? It allows your users to interactively create and edit geometries, whether it's a brand new geometry or an existing one. Pop-ups manage attachments for you. You can choose an attachment size, provide names for it, and you can provide attachments in any number of different formats. And as we saw in the previous demo, pop-ups allow you to display charts, graphs, hyperlinks, etc. And pop-ups also support editor tracking. It can display which user created the feature and edited it when. And pop-up honors the settings that are provided at the service level. For example, if your ArcGIS service has a capabilities setting that only allows add operation, then the default pop-up would not show edit or delete button. It would just allow you to add. Similarly, if the ownership-based access control is set up so that non-owners can only edit features, they cannot delete it, again in that case the pop-up wouldn't show the delete button. So you get all these just by using the default pop-ups in iOS. With that, let's see a demo of how you can create and show pop-ups in code, how you can edit features using pop-ups, and some of the pop-ups capabilities. So I have another Xcode project set up. Just like before, let me kickstart this app so I can talk now. First, I've created a service feature table from the URL. Next, I've created a feature layer from this service feature table. I've created a map in code and with the base map of light gray canvas. Next, I've added the feature layer to my map, bound it to map view, and set the map's touch delegate. But in addition, I have also created a sketch editor and set it to the map. This is going to help me with editing geometries. As before, I have implemented this method that would get called back when the user taps on screen. I've implemented the identify layer method, which would give me features in this case. So when the identify method calls me back, I'm going to get the geo elements because there are not going to be any pop-ups here. Geo elements, as I said, can be features or graphics. In this case, it will be features. Then I create pop-up from this geo elements, which would have all the default list of attributes, and I give it to the pop-ups view controller as before. I have also implemented a few pop-up delegate methods. Let's go through them. I mentioned sketch editor is used for editing geometries. So in this method, I give the pop-up a sketch editor so it can know when my geometry changes. Basically, pop-up and sketch editor work hand in hand during editing. And before giving it, I'm also starting the sketch editor with the geometry of the feature for which we are showing the pop-up right now. So that's that. And then the next method is going to be called back when the user is about to start editing geometry. Now, I dismiss the pop-ups view controller inside this because I want the map to be visible, and the user can edit the geometry. The next two methods are called when the user either cancels editing or is done with editing. In both cases, I simply stop the sketch editor. And as before, I implement this method when the user is done viewing to dismiss the pop-ups view controller. And let's go to the app. So this is a very, very simple app with just one feature. Let's tap on it, identify, to bring the pop-up. Let's edit the feature. Let's first edit the geometry by tapping on this button in the bottom left. Sketch editor becomes active now, and it allows me to update the geometry. When I'm done, I simply hit done. Next, let's edit attributes. The field incident type is a coded domain here with a number of different values. So pop-ups presents me with the list that I can choose one from, or I can even search for one if there are just too many values in there. The next field, damage extent, is also a coded domain, but it has lesser number of values. So the pop-up understands that and it presents me with a different list. Let me change the damage extent, and I'm prompted with an alert. This is because damage extent is a feature type and it has its own set of default values. So pop-up's asking me whether I want to keep the default reset to default values or keep the current ones. I'll choose to keep the current ones. Next, let me edit the area zone. As soon as I remove it, pop-up gives me a warning because this is a non-nullable field. Also notice the done button is gone there. Let me edit a value. I'm still prompted with this. That's because area zone also has a range domain. The valid zones can only range from 0 to 3. So I enter 2 and we are good. And while editing text fields, pop-up keeps track of the text length for me and doesn't allow me to go over. And for date fields, it provides me with a custom keyboard including the date picker. And the occupancy field here is again a coded domain, but it has just 3 short values. So why not display them as a segment control rather than a list? The same goes for the next field as well. I can also add attachments, give it a name, and Popup shows me the attachment size. I can change the attachment size. I hit done to be done with editing, and done once more to dismiss the view controller. So that's how you create pop-ups in code, edit features, and those were some of the capabilities the default pop-ups provides you. I will very quickly go through the next section about customizing pop-ups. You can customize the existing pop-up view controller's look and feel. There are delegate methods that will allow you to set a custom view for header and footer. This snippet, this screenshot has a map for a custom header and a label showing the coordinates for the custom footer. You can also change the UI controls for the Popups view controller, or you can define a whole new theme. So your pop-up fits with the rest of your app. For example, this is the pop-up created by these few lines of codes. Or alternatively, you can create your own UI instead of using the Popup's view controller. The SDK provides a class Popup Manager to help you with the business logic for editing and data validation, so you can just focus on building your UI. I'd like to conclude this session by showing some screenshots from an example app Explorer that you may have seen during the plenary. This app has custom Popup UI and uses Popup Manager under the hood. Upon identifying a feature, Popup only comes up partially. Note the tabbed approach for attributes and attachments, and the sliding panel can be pulled up for more information. And here's how multiple results are displayed. And this one's from a different service that doesn't have attachments. I'm not sure if you can see, but there's no attachments tabs there. Instead, there is media. And switching to that tab makes media visible. So with that said, for most users' requirement, the default pop-up should be good enough, especially since you can customize it or theme it. But you have the ability to build your own pop-up if need be. I think that brings us to the end of this session. There's also an editing session that we have tomorrow that you may want to check out. With that, I'm open for questions. Yeah.
Scanning workflow, does that work with offline?
Yes. Yes, the pop-ups and the editing workflow is exactly the same for both online and offline. I can take further questions just outside. I think we have another demo theater that's about to get started. Well, thank you so much, and please provide session feedback on what you liked and what you would like to see in the next upcoming sessions. Thank you.